In my last video, I raged against Machine and made the case that, in my opinion, the current crop of gravel/adventure bikes are way too overgeared. And the video elicited a tremendous response, lots of views, a lot of comments, lots of discussion, which I think ultimately was my aim for the video. A lot of people agreed that a gravel bike or a bike packing bike with a 5034 just did not make sense, and that they too found themselves having to swap out the crankset or putting a bigger cassette and a wolf tooth road link just to get lower gears. Some people, as expected, suggested to just harden the f up. Typical roadie response, and if they wanted to ride slow, that they would just go ride a hybrid. So I thought in this video I would go and use the science, the numbers, and see how much slower a subcompact crank is compared to the compact road double. But before I get into that, I noticed that there was a clear distinction I didn't make in the last video. That is, in gravel riding, in mixed terrain riding, whatever you want to call it, there is definitely a distinct division between those that see it as a race and those that like to ride bikes and chill. So I can see if you view gravel riding as only gravel racing, then by all means ride your 5034, or if you're a real man, you would be riding a 5339 anyways, right? But if you don't care about that stuff and are more interested in where gravel roads can take you, the beautiful places where you can camp, where you can fish, all that other good stuff, this is definitely where I think the subcompact makes sense. What gets lost in this discussion is that people just like looking down and seeing a big chain ring. And when they hear the phrase subcompact or a sub 50 tooth large chain ring, they just freak out. So like with all bike debates, we're gonna have Sheldon Brown decide. I hopped onto his gear calculator, put in the maths and crunch the numbers, and we're gonna look at the gear range and top speed of a 5034 and compare it to the range and top speed of a 4630 to see if it's that big a deal. So one cool thing about the Sheldon Brown gear calculator is that it's got lots of options, and one of the most important ones is choosing the right wheel and tire diameter, because that does affect how your gears ultimately feel. So for these numbers, I put in 650B by 51 millimeters because supple life, and that is a wheel and tire diameter that these calculations are based on. So let's look at 5034 first. And for the rear cassette, I punched in 1130 as a rear cassette because that's typically what I've seen that gets paired with that. And on the high end, you have a high gear inch of a 125 gear inches. And in the low end, you have a low gear inch of 31.4. I'm not going to go into what exactly a gear inch is, but think of it as like an index. The higher the number, the higher gear it is, the more difficult it is to pedal, but also the higher potential speed. And the low number, the lower it is, the easier it is to get up those hills, especially with a load. So again, 5034 with an 1130 cassette, that gives you 125.8 on the high end and 31.4 gear inches on the low end. How fast is this combination? So with the 5011, which is the highest gear combination, if you spin your legs at 90 RPM, that gives you a top speed of 33.7 miles per hour. So yes, pretty fast. Some people would say that's not fast enough, and that's fine. But is it that much faster than a subcompact crankset? So I punched in the numbers once again for a 650B by 51 millimeter tire with a 4630 crankset. And I'm going to change the rear cassette on this one to an 1136. So the same smallest cog, but a larger rear cog for extra gears for climbing when loaded. So with that combination, you're looking at a high gear inch of 115 and a low gear inch of 23. So that's a difference of 10 whole gear inches in the top end. Does that mean if you're in the 4611 and you're pedaling your hardest, you're going 12 miles per hour? Actually not. At the same cadence, at 90 RPM, 4611 gets you up to 31 miles per hour. So I don't know in what universe that would be considered slow, especially on flat terrain. I can see where if you're going downhill and you're chasing someone down, you need to go faster. But there's also a ton of studies that show after a certain point and at a certain grade descent, you're actually better off just in the aero tuck. So yes, I suppose 4611 is technically slower than 5011. I'm not going to argue that. That's just maths. But that's a difference of 2.7 miles per hour. If it means that much to you, then by all means. But I'm saying that for the most part, that's kind of a negligible difference since I doubt that most people are going to be spending a majority of their time or any meaningful amount of time in that gear combination. To bring it back to the holidays, it's just like how huge shopping centers plan out their parking spaces for Christmas and Black Friday. But for most of the time, it's never at capacity, just those 2 days out of the year. But hey, if you're a racer or if you constantly are going over 31 miles per hour, then by all means, stick to your 5034. And here's the thing, just by me advocating for the subcompact doesn't mean the 5034 is ever gonna go away. The bike industry loves racers. You guys are coddled, you guys are literally put on a podium. I'm merely asking for an alternative for people that want something different, that ride with stuff on their bike. And no, I am not getting paid by the big 4630 lobby. Easton, FSA, and Compass didn't get together in a back room and pay me with a lifetime supply of Compass tires to preach this message. Although that would be sweet, I would take that. I would take those tires. But that is not the case. I have been talking about the subcompact, the wide range double, for a decade at least. I used to have a website called Epicurean Cyclist, which covered all the stuff 10 years ago. It's only now I'm bringing it up again on YouTube. So to summarize, 4630 in my opinion isn't that much slower, not in any kind of meaningful real world sense for me and the way I like to ride, but it is in a very meaningful way more functional, because by having that smaller chainring, it allows me to have lower gears. So when I go touring, when I go on gravel roads with my fishing gear, with my painting gear, it's a little bit easier to climb. Maybe you don't need those low gears, you know, if you're just riding with goop hacks or whatever, or if you're super fast and a racer, no problem. The bike industry is not going to take that away from you. I'm just asking for an alternative that is more readily available for me, and I think for a lot of people. I promise the next video won't be so ranty, but if you like these videos, consider supporting the channel. I'm really trying to fill in that gap of bike content for non-racing cyclists. They've got like GCN for that, and Bike Radar, and every other big bike YouTube channel. I'm just a small voice in the sea of the internet trying to provide some alternative bike content. And if you dig that, check out the Patreon and PayPal links or buy a Supple t-shirt. And of course, until next time, keep the supple side down.